Welcome to HackerRank challenge number 12. In this one, we're supplied with a list of instructions that we're supposed to apply sequentially to an empty list. So in this example, we're given 4 instructions. First instruction is append the integer 1 to our list, which would leave us with a list that just has a 1 in it. Then we'll append 2, giving us 1 to 2. And then we're supposed to insert the number 3 in the element with index 1, which is the second element in the list. So now our list is 1, 3, 2, and then we're supposed to print the list. So this would be the output. Prior to starting with this exercise, I think it makes a lot of sense to familiarize yourself with the list methods that Python has inbuilt. So you can check those in the documentation of Python under data structures, more on lists. So you can see we just already mentioned append. You can see the syntax here. So you would have the name of your list that you want to append. Then you go append, and then as an argument, you pass in whatever element it is that you want to append. Similarly, you can see there's a few methods here that implement some sort of deletion. And you'll also find sort here. So I believe that we may have used that in a previous exercise. You have a few examples here as well. So if you're not familiar with these methods, just have a look at the documentation, and then we'll jump right back into the exercise. So to get started with the problem, we first want to make sure we fully understand how we're supplied with the input. So you can see an example of an input here. The first element that we're given is just an integer, in this case 12, that is supposed to tell us how many instructions we're supposed to receive subsequently. So this number is already being read here. So n should just be an integer that is read off of the input. So let's have a look when we print this out. We expect to just get an integer. If these instructions are the same, it should be 12. Yeah, so we can see that here. In order to read all these other instructions, we'll need to read from the input again. So for example, and this is just to understand how this works, we'll get our first instruction by reading the input again. So let's have a look. Input. Let's read that and print that out as well. Okay, let's run that. Yep, and now we can see that we got our 12 here and then the first instruction. So now we've printed out the first instruction. Let's print out all of the instructions. And we can do this by looping over this input function n times. So let's just write a for loop for I in range n. So whatever we put here will be executed n times. And we'll just print out the input. So let's do that, and that should print out all the instructions that we're getting for us. Okay. So now obviously so far we haven't actually manipulated any lists or done anything like that. But we have a good understanding of how to read in the input, and now we can go from there. So to actually work with our instructions now, we're going to save them into a variable. Let's call that variable instruction, and we'll assign the input to that variable. Okay, so in the first iteration, our variable instruction would have the string value insert 0, 5. Now, that's pretty good, but we would actually like to get these elements separately, right? We would like to access insert, then 0, and 5. And the way that we can do this is use the split method, split method. And what that will do is it will actually split up these elements. Anywhere where there's a space, it's going to separate that and save it into a list for us. So let's have a look what that looks like. So if we just print out instruction and we'll run our code, then we'll see that now all of these instructions are separated nicely into lists, and we can actually access each of these elements separately. So for the first instruction, the first element in the list that we're getting is insert, the second element is 0, and then the third element is 5. Okay, so now we have our instructions in a way that we can work with it fairly easily. And so let's get going with the problem. So the first thing that we'll need to do is assign an empty list. And one way of doing that is like so. So now we'll sequentially apply our instructions. And the most straightforward way of doing this is just with the if-else logic that we've used before. So we'll check what the instruction is, whether it's insert, print, remove, sort, pop, and so on. And then we'll just apply that method to our list. So let's start out by checking whether the method is insert. So we'll go if instruction, and now whatever the name of the method is will be the first element, so index 0. And if that is equal to the string insert, then we want to call the insert method onto our list. So our list is called L, so we'll go L insert. And now we need to remember from the methods that we just looked up that the first argument that we're providing to this method is the index. So in this case, that's the second argument of our list. So it would be instruction index 1. And then we'll insert the value which is stored in instruction index 2. Now these numbers here should be read as integers. So just to make sure that that's the case, we can typecast int. So that will just make sure that if currently this number is being read in as a string, it will now be translated to an integer. Easy enough. Okay, so now we can use elif or if statements to go through all the other possibilities of instructions that we might receive. So I'm going to use elif, and I'm going to check next whether the instruction is the print method. So we'll go equals print. And if that is the case, then we want to print out our list. So just go print L. Next, we'll do the remove method. So elif instruction equals remove. Then we want to apply the remove method to L remove. And in this case, sorry, I missed the 0 here. And in this case, the element that we want to remove is going to be stored here in the second element of the list, which has index 1. And again, just to make sure that that is being taken as an integer, we're going to typecast int. Okay, so I think that you get the idea. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit and just do the other instructions real quick. Okay, now we can run the code. Remember, all the print statements are already included in the instructions. So this should work now. And if we scroll down, yep, we passed our test case. So let's submit the code. Yep, and that looks good. We're done. Now, I will say that, this is a little bit tedious. And if you look into some other people's solutions, you might find that there's ways of doing this with less code. But I think that this is still a pretty solid way of doing it, and one that is relatively easy to understand, and that is also relatively robust. So yeah, I think we did well here. I'll see you at the next video.